Hello and welcome to the Limerick Post Show. On today's show, I have Limerick musician John Steele to talk about his new album. Hello, John. Thanks for coming on today to talk.
Thanks for having me.
So you released your new album a few weeks ago. Your second in a year. What was it like recording your second album in isolated circumstances?
It was the second album in 7 months, which was probably a bit much, really. But it's absolutely been a saving grace for me because I don't really get into TV much, and if I got into binge watching any series, I'd probably get hooked into that, and nothing would be done. The band that I'm in, the Flag Listeners, we couldn't really get together to write and record, so I decided just to work on my own stuff. And like the first album was kind of a challenge that I set myself. I said, look, by the end of the year I'll have my first solo album out, which I did, and then I just kept writing, and I suppose this second album is a little bit more kind of introspective than the first one. So I'm kind of honing the process as I go. Like, so, not that there will be a third album anytime soon, but maybe next year.
On your first solo album, you said this learning how to do yourself was a steep learning curve. Has that continued for the second one?
It did, yeah. I mean, you never stop learning. I mean, I'm lucky enough that I've been in the industry locally for a long time, and there's people like that were of massive help to me, like particularly my kind of partner in crime in the Flag Listeners, Eamon Hara, who's been very helpful. Tony Brennan, the drummer with the Flag Listeners, as well as Ross Brennan from another band I'm in called Fall Dogs. So yeah, and the first I barely had the studio set up, and I got a message from Dave Keary, asking me could I put something down on the Joe Brown album, because I had played with him with Joe for a number of years. So so that was a real kind of baptism of fire, because I really look up to Dave, so it's kind of I admire him as a musician. So I didn't want to let him down. But that album worked out. He did a great job in it. So yeah, it's kind of like, even he said, and he's a veteran at recording, and even like people like Richard Dowling, who mastered the album and kind of mastered all of the stuff I've done. Like, you never stop learning this stuff. You just keep learning. But I suppose once you're writing for yourself and you're not writing for anyone else, you'll know the sound you want, and I suppose kind of the downside is having to play all the instruments on it myself, because I'm a guitar player, but in terms of like, even bass guitar was an alien concept to me. It did teach me that my timing was really bad, but that's improved. That's just something as you go along, But people seem to think that bass guitar is the easier instrument. It's certainly not. That was a really steep learning curve as well. But it's all been good, I mean, I'm playing music every day. I'm recording music every day. Like, I can't gig yet. Hopefully that will be back very soon. So when I do get back gigging, I feel I've become a better musician, through this experience.
And on that learning every day, and the last time you were on the show, you talked about learning piano and how you used it on these Strangers in These Days, and you've also used it on your new album. And I Was a Soldier. I Was That Soldier. So so it's able to learn and infuse new learning processes onto your new introspective album.
Yeah. I mean, piano is an interesting one, because like, my idea, like, when I'm recording piano, I'll play, like, I have like at the start it was kind of 20-second bursts of competence. That's kind of moved up to about 40 seconds now, so but it's knitting them all together. So you play for 20 seconds, excuse me, you make a mistake, and then you start that part again, if you know what I mean. So it's not as if I sat down at the piano and played this lovely fluent kind of flowing style. It's all kind of knitted together in the studio. But piano is beautiful. I'm really enjoying learning it. I'm far from being at a stage where I can gig it, but I want to get to that stage.
And talking about the introspective stuff again, obviously, because it's a solo work, it is all your own work, and you don't have the flag listeners or the fall dogs to bounce stuff off. So how have you seen like your influences or your own style change once you have no exterior factors channel or have to fuse with other people's introspective ideas?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it's kind of I think for the first one there's a lot of like there's even the opening track on the first album. It's a song called "Not As Advertised," and it's not ashamed of its Talking Heads influence, and there are kind of overt, I suppose, influences on that album, but I don't think there's as much on this one, because I tried and it's very hard to actually do it because your influences have shaped what you are as an artist, so keeping Bowie influences out of it, or there's even in some ways I've got a wide array of influences, including Tony Bennett is a major influence of mine, along with David Bowie and Radiohead, and a lot of local bands as well, that really influenced me. But I tried to put them all away. I don't know if I succeeded, because I don't, I try to write, there's like, if I write, like for the first album, I wrote 24 or 5 songs and released 11, and dumped the rest. You take ideas from them, all right, but in this one, I wrote considerably less. But you do write a lot of stuff that, like, you have to live with it for a few days. You have to listen to it, kind of tweak it, and then park it for a couple of weeks, go back to it, and then think, is that good enough? Would it be something that I want to listen to again? And these songs in total were, like it's really interesting that you said that you're like this stuff, that the ideas that we bounce off each other as band members, particularly in the Flag Listeners. There's such an amount of influences in that band that it has to be kind of a democracy. No, it's not always a democracy, because if it's a song you've written and you want it to sound a certain way, and it sounds right in your head, you'll probably be a bit of a dictator about it. But
I'll probably give and take on individual songs.
It is absolutely, you're dead right. And with this album, I didn't have anybody to bounce it off, and it is difficult in a way, because it could very well be that I'm the only one that likes this stuff. Judging by the reviews, I got some really great reviews, from the leader, yourselves, the Post. Eric is absolutely wonderful support, as is Kieran, and I just got a really good one in Hot Press. So it's been received better, like as well as I could have expected. So I must have done something right. But again, like I'm hearing stuff in this album now, because like basically once the album is done, I don't listen to it anymore, because, and it's not because you don't like it, it's because you've gone through that, and every song has to be listened to again and again and again when you're mixing it, when you're recording it, and it's something, it's material that I use now as reference, So, you know, the stuff that I'm recording now, I'm recording stuff for the flag listeners, and I'm recording stuff for myself for the next album. And I will reference the last one, you know, and just try and improve as you go, you know. And I think you have to get the music out there in order to grow as a, you know, certainly as a, you know, record in terms of recording and production.
Mm. And a couple of your songs in your new album, It's a Lowest Walls and Adrift, you talk about like how people that don't know shout the loudest. And
yeah,
and your Facebook is quite a opinionated place, so you obviously have your own experience of dealing with people that probably shout the loudest and have the least.
Yeah, it's about me as well, you know. You know, I just found like I'm, you know, I've decided to step back from social media a bit. You know, in a lot of ways I was pushed because, you know, there's particularly on Facebook, it's just a cesspool, you know. And with the pandemic, you know, you're trying to have rational conversations with people, and you know, they're just not. They're more interested in the fight than they are
The outcome.
The outcome, exactly. So, you know, I include myself in, you know, that, like, I'm shouting about stuff, and then I get an education on it, and you know, you have to say, well, I was wrong about that, you know. So it is. I think the people that are shouting about it, I mean, there are particular people that are on this bandwagon, you know, and it's quite political, and it's quite negative and dangerous, particularly in these times. I mean, it's okay to have these wild ideas and you know, share some opinions that people wouldn't agree with. But when you're sharing an opinion that might influence somebody to make the wrong decision, and that decision could negatively affect their health because of the times we live in, I just don't think that's right. And you know, I am just as guilty as anybody else, and that's Adrift certainly is more about myself than anyone else. You know, he who shouts the loudest knows the least, because there's nothing like online, you know, in my experience, you know, when you say something and you're pretty sure it's right, because I wouldn't put something up that I wasn't, you know, convinced about. But then a friend will say, you know, you're wrong about that, and it actually works this way. You go, oh, okay, you know, and it's the climb down. But look, I'd like to think I'm adult enough to do that. But there isn't a whole lot of adults on the internet, unfortunately.
It all ties back into the daily learning process.
Yeah, exactly, and it certainly is a learning process. Yeah.
So if you want to hear John Steele shout his loudest, where can you find your new album, John?
On all online platforms. It's, if you want physical copies, they're in Steamboat Music and FSV. Steamboat actually mailed them out to you if you order them from the site. They're available in FSV. They've been really supportive, you know. They will be available in gigs. Bandcamp.com would be my favorite you know, resource, because they do give a lot more back to the artist than anybody else. But you know, hopefully I will be keeping some to sell at gigs, because I'm really looking forward to getting back to doing that. You know, getting back to wonderful places like, you know, Dolan's and the Record Room under the Commercial. You know, I just hope that people really come out and support live music when it's safe to do so, because, you know, we've gone through a long hiatus, certainly the longest I've gone since I started playing without having a gig, you know. So there's a hunger there, and I think the gigs that you'll see when it does come back will be incredible. The amount of hunger, and I've spoken to a lot of people who have said, you know, that they took it for granted. You know, I'd be one of them. You know, I mean, there's gigs that I play that, you know, there's not with the flag listeners, because they're few and far between, and you're really looking forward to them. But there's other gigs that I play that, you know, you mightn't necessarily be looking forward to them, but I look forward to every single one of them now. I'm really looking forward to getting together with mates. You know, I play occasionally with Mrs. Henry as well in Nancy's, and they're a great bunch of lads to play with. I'm just looking forward to getting back and playing as much as possible.
I don't think the cesspool would disagree with you on that. Thanks, John.
Not everybody's in the cesspool, by the way. It's just
Thank you for coming on, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. It's been a pleasure.